This is Performance Anxiety on the Pantheon Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Mark. And today's guest gives me the blues. But it's okay. That's his job. I welcome Lance Lopez to the podcast. While music wasn't exactly in his DNA, it was a huge part of his family. His dad was in the Army with Elvis Presley, and they stayed friends after their time in the service. When Lance wanted to learn guitar, his dad gave him an acoustic and Chuck Berry record and said, "Learn this." No mean feat for a kid, not even in double digits. But his world changed when he saw Stevie Ray Vaughan open for B.B. King. Lance had no idea who Stevie was at the time, but he sure knew who he was after. He moved to New Orleans with his dad, who encouraged him to play gigs in the French Quarter after school. So while most kids are working at McDonald's, Lance was playing 3 gigs a night and then going to class in the morning. All that work paid off when Buddy Miles saw him play and took him under his wing. After 4 solo albums and Livin' the Blues, Lance's sound changed and songwriting became his craft instead of soloing. He has been unbelievably busy over the years, at one point even hearing one of his songs and not recognizing himself. But when COVID slowed everything down, he turned to writing and recording remotely, as well as repairing tube amps as another income source. Lance's new album, Trouble Is Good, is a direct product of the pandemic. It's packed with amazing guests, and there's even a tribute to one of his favorite guitarists, who he lost during that time. So go to lancelopez.net and grab Trouble Is Good, because the album is good, whether you're a blues fan or not. Follow him at Lance Lopez Guitarist for info and tour dates. Follow us at Performance ANX. You can also check us out at ko-fi.com/performanceanxiety and performanceanx.threadless.com to help support the show. And get ready to get the best blues around with Lance Lopez on Performance Anxiety on the Pantheon Podcast Network.
Hey, this is Lance Lopez, and you're on Performance Anxiety. One more time, sorry. Hey, this is Lance Lopez on Performance Anxiety Podcast. Check out my new record, Trouble Is Good, at lancelopez.net and at Instagram, Lance Lopez Guitarist. Thank once again, Performance Anxiety Podcast. Can you hear me?
Yep, perfectly.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
I think so.
Most of the time, that's a yes or no question, man. That's the first time I got an I think so.
We got you now. Sorry about that, man. I was trying to get my audio together over here.
No problem, man.
How are you, Mark?
Good. How are you?
Good, man. Very good. Very good.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to have you on. So thank you for joining me.
Absolutely, Mark. Thank you so much for having me today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. All right. So you've got a new album that's just been released, but I kind of like to find out how you've gotten to this point of releasing a new album. And your story is just amazing. It's, it starts off so early.
Oh, thank you, Mark.
I want to know more about how you got to the point where you've just released the new album, Trouble Is Good, which is fantastic, by the way. But
thank you so much. Thanks, Mark.
But I want to find out a little bit about how you got into music in the first place. I know you moved around a lot. You're born in Shreveport. You've lived in Dallas, New Orleans, Florida, and unfortunately, you're an LSU fan. So I will forgive that for this episode.
Go Tigers!
Yeah, roll Tide. So I'm gonna have to stay in touch with you, and we'll have to pick on each other during the game.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome.
But I'm assuming you're a Saints fan, and you guys did have one of my favorite players of all time on your team forever, Mark Ingram.
Oh, my gosh, yes.
I love that man.
Wow. Absolutely. Who dat?
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. That was good. Those are good days. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So how did you get into music in the first place? Were your parents into it? Were they musicians at all at themselves? Were they into music and involved in music in any way?
No, that's a good question. My father encouraged me to play music. I remember him showing me a Betamax video cassette of Elvis when I was a toddler, which is kind of what, sparked the whole guitar playing thing. I mean, that was the first guitar playing I'd ever seen, and I wanted to play guitar. So my father was in the Army with Elvis. He knew Elvis Presley.
Wow.
And so he encouraged me to play music. And a few years later, he got me a guitar for Christmas. And gave me a Chuck Berry record and
Oh, wow.
told me if I learned all the Chuck Berry songs, I could get an electric guitar. So
Oh, wow.
that kind of prompted the self-teaching thing. So I had to like really work hard, because I wanted an electric guitar. That was the end goal, so.
That's crazy. Now, Chuck famously didn't really play to like standard tunings. He would play in different keys. That had to be
exactly. So
tough.
I was like listening and tuning and trying to figure out all the in-between keys and
wow.
And that was the beginning. I mean, once I learned like D, C, G, A minor, E, the basic chords, and then it was on to that. And then it was just like the 3-chord structure of the rhythm and the whole, the turnarounds and everything, which is why I think the blues made so much sense to me, I think all along, kind of having that foundation. And then some of the rock and roll at the time made sense to me, like Angus Young, like watching AC/DC and then hearing those licks and then going, oh, wow, that's kind of where it originated. So that was interesting, to learn as well. So, and watching all those kind of players at the same time as a young kid in that era, seeing arena rock bands and all those big, huge bands like Van Halen and AC/DC and Rush and Kiss and et cetera.
Yeah.
I mean, seeing all that and then going home and then trying to emulate it, all the kids in the neighborhood, several kids in the neighborhood playing guitar and then Van Halen, being just on top of the earth and just inspiring all young guitar players.
Right.
And I was drawn to music of the era kind of prior to that. And I don't know if that was the basis of starting with Chuck Berry or early rock and roll, because my father started me in early rock and roll, Little Richard and Chuck Berry and Elvis and all that music. So, as time went on, I remember coming home from school and the kids having a record. And you got to understand, I'm telling my age, but this was in the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
And,
I was there.
I was a little kid. I was like a little Stranger Things kid. But I remember coming home from school and they had a record and you have to, and this was, after the era of Purple Rain, because you remember when Purple Rain came out, it was the big, huge movie and the videos on MTV and When Doves Cry and the whole thing. So I got home from school and I saw this album, this big yellow album. And it was a big circular and purple said, "Are you experienced?" on it. And I'm looking at it and I go, man, this dude looks like kind of like Prince, because I'm thinking of Purple Rain, and I think I'm thinking they just brought this home. Like this is a brand new.
Oh,
artist. Wow. And I put, and they had the record on and I heard, "Are you experienced?" And they dropped the needle on the record. And it was life-changing. It was like from there on out, it was like that and then everything else. So my journey shifted to a whole another style of guitar playing and, that I'm still studying today. Yeah. And so, anyway, it went on from there, man, just playing guitar and teaching myself. And, I moved to Dallas. My dad moved to New Orleans. My mom being the Saints fans and LSU, being in Louisiana. Well, my mom moved to Texas. My dad stayed in Louisiana. He went to New Orleans.
Okay.
And, going to Texas, man, it was where the blues really started for me. In Louisiana, I was born in it and I was surrounded around it and I knew what it was. And I remember my dad turning me on to B.B. King. And I remember playing with kids in the neighborhood who were shredding and tapping. And they were like, "Man, you play too bluesy."
Oh, wow.
Like it was a bad thing.
Yeah.
Like it was cool. Like it wasn't cool, And they're like, "Man, you're like a blues guitar player." And,
yeah, I am.
Exactly. And anyway, man, it was just, learning to play that music and getting into the blues began really in Texas. I mean, we moved there and I asked my mom to take me to see B.B. King. And once we got there, everybody there had these T-shirts on that said SRV on them. And I was like, what does that mean? And it was like annoying to me, because I didn't even know. And then B.B. King played. It was like life-changing. And then out came Stevie Ray Vaughan and Double Trouble.
Yeah. And
I had no clue who he was or anything about Stevie Ray Vaughan. And it just was, life-changing, man. And again, going back to Jimi Hendrix, it was like I'd never even thought that anybody would even attempt to play Hendrix live, and had never seen anybody play Hendrix live, and then seeing Stevie Ray do that. So from there on forward, it was the blues.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Before you skip over this ad, give me 1 minute. Like most podcasts, I pick sponsors carefully, and I use the products that advertise here. Pure Spectrum CBD is a product that has been really beneficial for me. They have a wide variety of great products that can be used on a daily or as needed basis. I've been using the tincture every day, and it's been wonderful for easing anxiety. And I absolutely love the isolate. I use it instead of acetaminophen or ibuprofen, and it's worked so well for the relief of aches and pains. They also have soaks, lotions, salves, gummies, and more, plus an entire line for fitness recovery. They even have products for your pets. See everything they offer at purespectrumcbd.com. And if you have questions, they're there to help. They helped me when I had no idea where to start. After you fill your cart, use code PerformanceANX for 15% off your purchase. Pure Spectrum CBD, Pure Spectrum CBD, Pure Spectrum CBD. That's amazing. I didn't get to see Stevie Ray live at all. I would have, because like you, I didn't know about him until just before he died. So, and I never, right. I really wasn't, I wasn't going to see concerts until I was in my later teens and all. So I never really got a chance to see him, and I didn't really get into it until later. So the fact that you got to see him and B.B. King is just, that kind of blows my mind.
I mean, it was the first blues jam that I ever witnessed. I mean, that was like where I got it, you know, and I mean, seeing B.B. King alone was like, it was, you know, awe-inspiring,
right?
You know, and then seeing Stevie Ray Vaughan right after that, and then seeing them play together was where it was like, okay, the blues, you know, and the study from the very beginning all the way throughout, you know, from the Delta blues, the country blues, all the way through to Chicago, to the electric, you know, all the regions of it, Texas and in Chicago. And, you know, so that it just was a deep dive study as a kid, which I look back now and it's funny because it's like the internet, man. You know, there was no internet. It was like the library, looking things up and really digging and going and trying to find, you know, things about the blues, records, magazines, books, anything you could find, you know. So, I mean, yeah, that was where the journey began for me. And, you know, and from there on out, it was like, you know, forming bands. And then I moved with my dad to New Orleans. I mean, you know, living in Dallas, I played with bands growing up with kids, and we played little kid parties and, you know, stuff around, you know, like the Lake Islands neighborhood of Dallas. But I moved to New Orleans with my father, and he had heard how hard I'd been working and how much I had progressed as a guitar player and how advanced I had gotten. And so he was like, man, it's time to go play live.
Oh, wow.
You know, and he was like, it's time to go out and it's time to go. And you know, he took me out and I started playing in the French Quarter in Fat City in New Orleans. And you know, that's where it kind of began for me out playing professionally. And it was like, oh, wow, I can go out and sit in and they were playing. And I was just, I had never rehearsed with these guys or anything. And I was just grabbing the changes and playing along with the band and playing lead. And it just was flowing. And from there, I just started joining different bands, and there were really no rehearsals. It was just like play the gig, and it was just like listen and watch. And
wow.
And it really was a great education in the very beginning. And it was three gigs a night, and I was going to school at the same time, you know.
Wow.
I was like, you know, and it was crazy. I mean, I think about it now. My dad was like, go play. And he was like, go out there and play. He was like, tear it up. And he would go with me sometimes if he could. And sometimes if he couldn't, I was just out playing. Like, you know, that was my high school job.
Wow.
Playing in the French Quarter, 7-Eleven bourbon, you know.
Jeez.
Doing the late shift on Wednesday night.
That's incredible. Now, were you singing as well at this point, or did that start later?
No, I was just playing guitar.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just playing guitar. Yeah, I wasn't really singing yet. I mean, I'd attempted to sing, but not really.
Okay, so this was like your early teens, because I read that.
Yeah, I was probably about 14 or 15 about this time. Yeah.
Okay, so cause I read that when you were 17, you started playing the Chitlin circuit with Johnny Taylor.
Yeah,
God,
absolutely. Yeah,
that crazy.
Yeah, by that time, we moved back to Texas. We moved to Florida briefly, And when we moved back to Texas, I went out, Lucky Peterson, the great Lucky Peterson, whom I played with for many years, had been playing in Florida where we were living. And when we moved back to Dallas, I had befriended them there and seen him in Florida. And when we moved back to Dallas, I had befriended the band guys. And we were all hanging out and we were jamming at all the blues clubs around Dallas. And I was playing with his band members. And we all got along and they all loved me. And it was all, we all loved each other.
Right.
And so one night there was a club in South Dallas called Booker's Arandis, which is no longer there, but it was a heavy duty club, like where B.B. King would hang out after his concerts in town, and Miles Davis would hang out there, and all these like heavy, cats like that. And so they were like, man, and I talked to one of his horn players. He goes, man, we're going down to Booker's Arandis, and Lucky's playing. He's like, come with us and come jam with us. So I was like, wow, man, that's amazing. I was just a kid, to get invited to go jam at a like totally swank, real deal, legit, like jazz, blues, the real thing, And it was just amazing to get that invitation. And I went down there and Lucky called me up and he handed me his guitar. Wow. And I just remember playing my ass off, playing everything I could. And then I handed the guitar back to Lucky and I stepped off the stage. And the minute I stepped off the stage, a guy grabbed me and he was like, hey, man, can you be in Atlanta in 2 days? And I was like, I don't know, man. I got to ask my dad. I was like, I don't know. And my dad was like, go.
Oh, man. I love your dad. Holy crap.
Yeah, he was like, man, go out there and play. So 2 days later, I had to go to the mall, to the music store and buy cassettes. This is how long ago this was. I had to buy 2 like greatest hits cassettes with a Walkman back then on a tour bus with the foam headphones, with a Stratocaster, with the top out of a Stratocaster on the headphone like this, learning the songs over the cassette and a piece of paper and charting it and the guitar and then rewind and play and the bump of the bus and the whole thing. It was like, that's how it all started.
That's crazy. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was nuts.
So that was the start of what's been just an incredible career. I looked at not only your own career, but the people you've collaborated with is just a who's who of blues and rock guitarists and drummers and keyboardists. Billy Gibbons, Buddy Miles, Jeff Beck, Steve Vai, Eric Gales. These are the guys that I loved and I've been listening to forever. And you've been able to just kind of go right in and just, it sounds like, you just kind of slide right into these amazing situations, and not undeservedly, I'm going to say, because of your talent. And it's just incredible.
Well, thank you, man. No, it's been amazing. I mean, Eric, you mentioned all these great musicians, and yes, it's what an honor and a privilege it is and a blessing to get to work with such great iconic artists. I mean, it has been just such a blessing, and such the real gift of being a musician. And is working with other great musicians and getting the opportunity to work with other great musicians, I think is really the key there.
Well, and it shows that the hard work you put in has paid off.
Oh, well, thank you, Mark. Yeah, I think back when I was a kid and even into my teens and into my early 20s, I remember practicing 9 hours a day. I mean, and playing guitar. And today it's the same way. It's picking it up and thinking in musical terms and writing and the whole production standpoint of, I play guitar differently today. I just don't play guitar to play guitar. I play guitar to create music, and not just be a lead guitar player. And I think that's one of the things that I always loved about bringing into, like what you said, the collaborations. I had the ability to collaborate with a lot of great guitar players. And every time I was around greatness, some guitar players I would ask point blank, hey, can I get a lesson?
I was going to ask you about that.
Can I get a guitar lesson? Like, can we go sit down here in the hotel lobby and can you show me a lick? Like just one lick, and that's kind of how it started with Johnny Winter. I mean, and some of the slide licks, I had questions about, slide guitar. And And what an honor, that it was I think that was the key of the journey on earth of being a musician in this lifetime, is to learn as much knowledge as you can, to pass that knowledge on, and then to use that knowledge and to translate it in your own way. And I think that's what I try to do. And I think that's the blessing of working and collaborating with all these great artists, is, working with all that energy and then combining it with mine and translating it out the way it comes out. So I felt like we did that a lot on this record. I think that it spun a lot of all the influences that I have out, and it was delivered this way.
Yeah. At what point did you go from being a hired gun, sideman kind of guy to wanting to put out your own music? How old were you, and how did that whole process start?
Well, for me, it kind of started with Buddy Miles. It started working with Buddy. I had met Buddy. I was playing guitar with Lucky Peterson, and we were traveling all over the world a lot. And we were in Pierre, Belgium, at the Belgium Rhythm and Blues Festival back in 1997.
Okay.
A lot of iconic artists. Peter Green was there that day, Ronnie Earl, like all these really great iconic blues guitar players. And Buddy Miles was there, and I was super excited. And we played our set, and I looked over to my side, and there was Buddy sitting in a wheelchair, and he was right on the wing of the stage. Okay. And he watched the whole set. And when I came off, that's why he recognized the way that I played and some of the chord voicings I was using in Lucky's band, because it was a horn band. It was at a big horn section, and it was like a big heavy duty amplified funk band, blues band.
Right.
So Buddy had recognized how I played, and and that was the immediate. I walked off the stage, and he immediately gave me a huge, big hug.
Oh, wow.
And then from there on out, the rest was history. He moved to Fort Worth, Texas. And that's where it began with me shifting into my solo career. I had started working on some projects with Buddy, and, we kind of had some ups and downs with it. And I was still playing with Lucky, and then still playing with my own band. I started, forming trios and playing around in Texas. Okay. And I was playing all over Texas, and then going out with Lucky Peterson, and then also playing with Buddy Miles at the same time. And it was Buddy that started to really encourage me making my own record. And so, and that's what we did. We wrote a lot of music. Buddy Miles and I created a lot of music. We jammed a lot together. He had a house in Fort Worth, Texas on Byers Avenue. It was a huge, big house. We had a big backline set up with the drums in the middle of the house, Marshall stacks and Fender amps all over the place, big giant PA. And we jammed, and we wrote riffs and songs and music, and we wrote all this music, and that's what came of my first record. We went to the Dallas Sound Lab in Dallas, where a lot of iconic records were recorded, and we recorded it. And that's where it started from there. We recorded the record. Buddy started the record. I brought in a guy named Jay Newland, who later on went on to work with Norah Jones and a lot of other great iconic jazz artists. Yeah. The great Jay Newland. I brought the great Jay Newland in to finish my first record.
Wow.
And then I went back out on another tour with Lucky Peterson. So we made the record, and we were like, it was the beginning of the internet. Labels were starting to kind of I had some offers on it. And we were like, we're just going to put it out ourselves and create a website and try to sell it on the internet and take it out of the road and sell it at the gigs, And so we printed up a bunch. Well, I went back out on a tour with Lucky Peterson, and it was Lucky Peterson who said, man, you need to bring suitcases full of those CDs on this tour. And when you're out with me, you need to be handing them out to the promoters of every gig we play.
Wow.
And so that's what I did. I literally had one extra suitcase full of CDs and extra baggage. And I went around, and every gig I gave CDs to the promoters, to the guys backstage that were handling the show. Hey man, here's my thing. And then Lucky was featuring me. I was actually the MD of the band. I was the band leader.
Wow.
And so that's truly what helped me get a foothold in Europe. We got brought over on a small tour. The first tour with the first record, we came over, we did the Netherlands, we did Germany and France. There was a writer for a magazine called Aardschok in the Netherlands. And he booked a tour and there was a lot of pubs. It was like the classic thing of the bands, touring Europe for the first time.
Yeah.
The pubs and the whole thing, and you imagine it.
Oh yeah.
And it was three guys from Texas, let loose in Amsterdam.
Oh.
It was like back in the day, back in the 90s or whatever it was. It was like, oh my God, it was out of control. So, it was just the classic thing. And so, that was the deal. We did that tour and then people saw us on that. And then that led to another company and that led to a bigger tour.
When I see, baby, you come and tell me I start to sweat, baby, and my breathing gets heavy. I've seen you walk now, baby.
And then from there, one of those CDs that I handed out on that prior tour a couple of years later helped me later on with a great promoter that then took us, and we worked for years in Europe together.
Oh, cool.
And it was one of those things that kind of just happened in these kind of ladders over there. And so it was a very interesting time period. I'd cut a bunch of records in the early 2000s, the Eric Gales and I had with Doug Pinnick from King's X. And
they have taken everything away from me, my freedom and my will to live. Yeah, I work my fingers to the bone.
And now when I went on to do other records after the first record, we connected with a label in Rochester, New York called Grooveyard Records.
Oh yeah, I'm familiar with them.
It was interesting, man. It was an interesting situation. It was like I was producing my own records. I was in my 20s, and I was working efficiently and quickly with the budget that I had in a studio.
Okay.
It was about being prepared, and a lot of it was very open-ended and jammy. Anyway, it was a lot of jam, guitar and a lot of that for the sections of it. But creating the music in the studio and trying to capture it in the recording studio really forced me with the budgets that I had, really forced me to be efficient and as a producer. And so, and working very quickly. So that's what I really attribute a lot of it, most of it to, on those albums that I did early on, and with the second record, Eric Gales and I were so prepared with the music that we were able to really pull it off very quickly. So.
So long, trying to figure out where did I go wrong, living a life smiling.
Those records were done really quickly and really efficiently, and by the fourth one, again, like I say, we were going back over, and we began opening for some great bands, and doing some great shows.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. So I've noticed that there's a bit of a change at one point. So you've got your first, I believe it's the first 4 albums. They're just unreal amounts of blues shredding on there. Songs like Love, Hate, Relationship. You are just channeling Hendrix. It's just incredible. And it's guitar, but it's also vocally. I hear a lot of Hendrix and Doug Pinnick, like you mentioned. And I hear that in the vocals, but I hear some Stevie Ray in there. But I don't hear a whole lot of the older traditional blues until you get a little further on. But songs like Skank and all are amazing. I love that song. That is such a cool track.
Right. Thank you, Mark.
But you really seem to find your voice to me. The way it appeared to me in just going back and listening to your albums, right after Higher Ground, you kind of seem to shift focus a little bit. And things seem to be more song-based than solo-based.
Absolutely.
And I even hear from Salvation from Sundown, I even hear your vocals change.
Right.
Was that something that was a conscious decision for you on the songwriting and the performance side?
That's a great observation, Mark. No, absolutely. It was both. I think, and it was the evolution of Lance Lopez. I mean, it was the evolution of myself. I mean, I began to change as an artist. I had a lot of ups and downs I was dealing with personally. I had a lot of stuff, and it was the blues. It was living the blues, and that's truly what it was. And, making those early records, like I said, they were done really quickly. They were done in a state they were very intense. I shifted gears. I think I began to mature a bit, and I began to really focus on the song. I wanted to really focus on songwriting and not just writing songs for a reason to play a guitar solo.
Okay. Right.
I felt like I had done that on those early records, and I felt like I had done that. And now it was time to focus on songwriting and presenting stories and in the way that I could, and the best way that I could, while still retaining some of those elements from that era. I think that's what I'm really trying to do now, is combine some of, the early era of what I've done in the past with some of what I'm doing now. Always, I try to retain that in a lot of the records. But yeah, that's a great observation. Salvation from Sundown was interesting. Starting with that record, we signed to a new label. We moved to a different label. We did those records on Grooveyard, and then we went to MIG in Germany. Okay. And it was run by a great company that had worked with some classic metal, like Judas Priest and Motorhead and Dio and all these kinds of acts. Oh. And so they were wanting to get into blues. And so we were able to secure a great deal for the record. And, we cut and I hired Jim Gaines. I reached out to Jim. I said, after doing those records, like those first 4 records, the way that I did, having to work so efficiently, especially after doing Higher Ground and playing all the instruments on the record,
that's cool.
I was like, I am producing the album and playing every drums, bass, guitars, keyboard, singing. I was like, after this, I need a producer in the studio and a band. I need producers to help me. I was like, that was just like, oh my God. That was the moment where I went, okay, I did it. I need a producer.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. You can always say you've done that now.
Right.
Again, like I said, I've listened to your discography, and I really love like Heart Fixin' Blues.
I'm a heart fixin' baby. I specialize in heart repair. I'm a heart fixin' now, baby. I specialize in heart repair.
Like you said, that's where you go back to a little more the roots of the blues, but you still have those great solos. They're just
right.
A great mix.
You, Mark. Thank you so much, Mark. Well, yeah, that was what I was going to say. I brought in Jim Gaines, and Jim had done. I mean, his catalog is great. I mean, he did Stevie Ray Vaughan in Step. He did Steve Miller, Fly Like an Eagle, Carlos Santana. Supernatural. All these epic, iconic albums And I remember listening, and we're talking about the songwriting aspect. And I was listening to Steve Miller, and I was listening to Fly Like an Eagle and Book of Dreams. I was listening to those records, and the synth intro to Fly Like an Eagle and the Threshold into Jet Airliner. And I really was like, wow, this is amazing. This is amazing stuff. And Jim Gaines had worked on all those records. And so I really had wanted to work with Jim on, and let's make a record like Miller used to make. Let's make with great songs, because when you go see Steve Miller, everybody's singing the words to every song. Yeah. And it's so amazing. And so I was like, I was really interested in that. And then Jim got, we got in the studio, and he was like, oh man, you're a blues artist, man. We're gonna make a blues record. So we started in Dallas, and at Luminous Sound in Dallas, and we cut the band and we started cutting tracks. And then midway through, we just shifted gears and we went to Arden in Memphis. Oh, wow. And that's where the vocal, I'll tell you, Mark, I'm glad you made that observation, because it was in Memphis where my vocals really changed. Oh, okay. And it was at Arden Studios in Memphis, the iconic studios there. Yeah. It changed, and that's where the vocal delivery and the style and the tone and some of the things I was doing, really changed with Salvation from Sundown. And so Heart Fixin' Blues, to go to highlight that song, was on an Albert King record called Years Gone By. Okay. And I had that record. I'd gotten that record probably a year prior to me discovering Stevie Ray Vaughan. So I had heard those Albert King licks, and then I heard Stevie Ray Vaughan. I went, oh my gosh, I was like, holy cow, But Heart Fixin', was on that. It was on that record, and I always loved it. And we were in Memphis, and they recorded it in Memphis. So it was like, man, I wanted to do a version of it and do it the way that, that I would do it. So I'm glad you liked it. And that's what was great. We did those two records in Memphis. We did Salvation from Sundown and Handmade Music, both in Memphis, Tennessee with Jim Gaines. It was a great experience.
I also loved off of Handmade Music, Dream Away.
Thank you.
That is such a wonderful song. I mean, the song itself is great, but you've also got that beautiful, it's a heartbreaking solo in it. It is really just amazingly played. It's a wonderful song. And it's for me, it's one of the highlights off that album.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, I wrote that with my good friend Scorch Scorsha in Dallas. He's a incredible B3 player, longtime friend of mine. He played with Omar and the Howlers back in the day.
Oh, cool.
And toured with Stevie Ray Vaughan and the Fabulous Thunderbirds. And dear friend of mine, Eric Scorsha, I love him to death. And he was a great songwriting partner of mine back then. And so we wrote Dream Away. It was a cold winter, rainy, just like the song says. And he was kind of going through it, with a relationship, and I was going through it. We were both going through it. And, I think I'd just gone through a breakup and something, and so had he, and we were going through. I don't even remember. But it was like those kinds of moments, and so our solution was to get together and write a song, and that's always been the saving grace of life for me. Also, it's like, hey, let's get together and in the healthy outlet, and let's use this musically. And that's what Dream Away became. That's what Dream Away was a way to get together and write a song and then record a song on the record and heal, and we're still doing that today. And I think that was one of the first examples, though, in my work of that. I'm glad you mentioned that. I think on Simplify Your Vision, I had done Do Cigarettes, but that was more of a straight ahead hardcore blues rock thing. This was more, of a song, of a ballad, that told a soft story, and then had dynamics, had light and shade.
Yeah, exactly.
And so It was one of those points. So yeah, we definitely were focusing on writing the songs and then using the songs as a healthy outlet, and Dream Away was one of those.
And I think another one is Letters. I love the song Letters. That I love the riff on that. It's really cool chord progression. I just really unique sounding on that album. I love it.
Yeah, that was another one where, you know, we were just trying to showcase. We love all our English rock bands, you know, so we were listening to a lot of that, and we were really influenced by that. And again, you know, the same thing. I think we were kind of going through it. I think, you know, we were writing those songs, and one or the other of us were going through it more than the other. So it was a little. That was like the text and the emails were going back and forth, and it was getting ugly, you know. And we were in a songwriting session, you know.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's how Letters came about.
Perfect timing.
Yeah.
And you've got another one after that. Tell the Truth is another awesome album. I love the opener. Never came easy to me. But in between those, you were part of this wild ass supersonic blues machine.
Yeah,
that started. I believe in between those albums, and it's just an insane amount of talent in that band between the core members and the guests. You know, there's you, Kenny Aronoff, Fabrizio Grossi, but you also had guest stars. You know, Billy Gibbons, Robin Ford, Warren Haynes, Eric Gales again, Chris Duarte, Walter Trout. Just the list goes on. It's insane. How did that?
All my good buddies.
How did that band come to be? How did that whole project start?
Well, you know, it was really interesting. I was in Los Angeles working a lot. I was doing a lot of sessions and playing a lot of gigs, and you know, people had been telling me to connect with Fabrizio Grossi for quite some time, because I was working in Europe a lot, and I was working in Eastern Europe and the Balkans, and his name kept coming up, you know, because he's from Milan, he's Italian. A lot of people in that region know who he is, and they were telling me about him. And when I got back to the States, you know, after Handmade Music, I ended up doing a new record. We had recorded a live album. You know, we had recorded some stuff at Johnny Winter's birthday party, and which came out as the Live NYC record. Right. Yeah. We had some tracks recorded. My set was recorded. However, it was time to make a record, and so a friend of ours, mutual friend who's no longer with us, who was a journalist named Tony Connolly, basically introduced Fabrizio and I on Facebook. Okay. You know, he connected us on Messenger, and we started talking. We exchanged numbers. And I was coming to LA to do some sessions and play some shows. I was in Dallas at the time. And so I got there, and I had sent him some rough sketches of ideas that I had been working on at home. Okay. And he took those ideas and created some tracks. And when I got to LA, the tracks were created, and I brought my guitars and amps in and just cut guitars and cut vocals. And we knew by 2 songs that we had some great chemistry. And so in the midst of a few years, I cut, 3 records, and it just was like a big blur, It was like, it was a giant blur. I mean, because I spent a lot of time in Hollywood, and I was going back and forth, and it was like, it literally was like, it was a big blur. And then I was living part-time between Dallas and LA. And, wow. There was a time I remember going back to LA, and I sat down and we listened to like 3 tracks, and I was like, God, this is so great. And in between the tracks, I was like, God, this is so great. I was like, who is this? And everybody looked in the room, they go, dude, that's you. Yeah. I was like, man, who's singing? I was like, that's great. Is that who? They were like, dude, that's you, man. It was just so much music. So we did those 3 albums. We did the first Supersonic record.
Gasoline. I prefer
in between we were recording Tell the Truth, and then we did the second Supersonic record, and in between shows and tours.
Wow.
And
man.
So yeah, it was a big time period of me living part time between Dallas and LA, and it was a very interesting time. And so the band began to come together. I went back to Texas, and then Fabrizio called me and said, "Hey man, I just talked to Billy Gibbons. He's got some tracks. Let's work with Billy. Let's do some stuff." And that's how it all started. And then we just started working on. I went back to LA and we started recording, and I was living there part time, and we just made an entire catalog of work. Yeah. At that time, and and then all our friends started to show up. We invited all of our friends and all of our favorite guitar players who are all our friends. Yeah. So it's just what a blessing it is. Yeah. And so we did that, and it was great. And and then in the midst of that, we just started to do some touring, and just sadly there were some issues within the band, and some issues between Fabrizio and I, which we've since talked and everything's great, but it was just time for me to exit the project, obviously. And we had put out that Tell the Truth record, kind of coupled with the second Supersonic record. So, I wanted to support my record. Mm-hmm. I felt really great about the body of work that we had delivered on Tell the Truth with Fabrizio. We had some great guitar tones and some of the songs. So, I really wanted to go out and present that record correctly. So I reached back to some of my old friends back in Texas, like Wes Jeans. And I had a rhythm section from Austin, Texas, working with us, as well as Scortia, who I was just talking about, who wrote that music on Handmade Music, was playing Hammond B3 and other keyboards with us. So we had a big band, and that's what we really took out to support Tell the Truth with. So that's kind of how all that happened. I just recorded a giant body of work really quickly over a span of about 4 years of part-time living in LA, and them coming and dragging me out of Hollywood back to the studio. Oh man.
One of the things that I think is amazing is that you're kind of giving back to the blues community. You had some amazing mentors, and now you yourself are mentoring some amazing people like Ali Venable, Kingfish Ingram. These guys, these players are insane. So I think it's fantastic that you're giving back, and I know you've taught them a lot. Is there anything that you're learning from them?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's the work ethic of those kids is incredible. Yeah. And that's what I always remember about them. And that's what's so incredible to see and watch is, and it's so great. I was just talking about this earlier because there's a young guitar player here in Nashville now named Grace Bowers that's coming up, and she's been playing with us quite a bit. We played last weekend. We did 2 shows. And she said to me after my show, she goes, I never get to play straight blues like that. She was like, thank you so much. Like it's helped me as I'm growing, and it's hands-on. It's like, it's the way that I learned, which is coming to the gig and learning on the gig. Like, here we are, we're going to play. This is what we're going to play. There's no like rehearsals or let's work it out beforehand, guys. Yeah. It's like, it's like, here's the blues, and she loved that. And so I think that was what was so great about watching, all the young artists and young musicians I've had the opportunity to work with that have gone on to have such great success, is watching them work. And that's, you bring up Ali Venable. I mean, I worked with Ali for years, and it was just so incredible to watch her grow as a guitar player and as an artist and as a singer, as a songwriter. Yeah. I mean, I remember sitting with Ali at a Whataburger at midnight, and her with headphones and passing headphones back and forth and listening to songs she was demoing and writing. And how blown away I was sitting eating my cheeseburger, listening to Allie's songs, going, "Oh my God, wow, she's such a great songwriter," And so it was just incredible to witness, these young artists grow, and the older iconic artists like you just mentioned that I've got to work with, I sought that out, and they did that with me, So it's really great to watch those artists develop into what they are today, and to watch those kids work super hard is a true validation. I mean, that's my Grammy. You know what I mean?
Oh, I love
watching one of my kids succeed.
That's awesome. Well, speaking of success, you got a new album out, Trouble Is Good. And I love it because, like you had mentioned earlier, it's kind of got elements of your later material where it's very song focused, but you've also got those fiery solos from your early days. It's just a perfect mix of everything in your career to my ears. The title track, I love the Trouble Is Good. That like swampy acoustic sound is just so cool. Love that so much.
Mark, thank you so much for all those kind words you're saying about that record. I mean, we worked super, super hard on this record. It was super piecemeal together, during the pandemic. And, that's what got us through, a lot of that time and that era. That's exactly what it was. I mean, Trouble Is Good. I mean, that's what the title, it's an era piece around all that, what we just all survived.
Right. Okay.
It was that, I mean, and, the thing about Trouble Is Good is that, because of what happened during the pandemic and all that whole different, that era, was the fact that, we all began to do different things like Zoom or home recording like me.
Yeah.
I began home recording, and I began working on guitar amps. I was repairing tube amps and working on electronics and doing different things that I normally wouldn't have done had that not happened, because I was getting ready to go back on tour and make a record. And we had been making plans to make a record, and then the pandemic hit. So that's why we were like, how are we going to do this now? And it was like, well, Joey Sykes, who produced this record, who I knew from the Supersonic Blues Machine days from LA, was excited that I had moved to Nashville. And so he had connections in Nashville because he was a songwriter here for a long time. And he was super excited, and we wanted to do a record, and then boom, COVID. So then it was like, what are we going to do now? And it was like, well, we're going to record at home. You're going to lay down ideas, email them to me, and we'll get tracks, and then we'll just send tracks back and forth. And, it's just crazy how we have this technology now today that we can record like that and do those sorts of things. It's so interesting. So that's how it began. I would write a song, I'd send it to Joey, or Joey would write a song and he would send it to me, and I would send some, we would collaborate, and I would send it back, and then he would put a track on it. And we got such great iconic artists to show up and play on the record, because being categorized as a blues rock artist, usually we wanted this record to rock. We wanted to really present that blues rock element of, really accentuate the rock. And, I went out and got some of my most favorite guys that I felt like play rock today. They're again, like Supersonic Blues Machine. I mean, it was like, let's go get our favorite guys and see if they'll come make a record with us, and that's kind of what we did. And it was like, and the fact of that, it was like, let's go and see if we can get our favorite guys. And we had Jurgen Carlson from Government Mule playing bass.
That's so
Danny
cool.
Miranda from Blue Oyster Cult playing bass. Bobby Rondinelli from Black Sabbath and Rainbow, playing drums. Brian Tichy from the Dead Daisies, playing drums. All these iconic, John Hummel. I mean, all these great iconic musicians showed up to play. And, we were able to create these tracks and present them in this way that, really translates what these blues infused tracks. It was like, how are these going to be presented? And I had visions and Joey had visions in our mind of how they needed to be sounded. And so we kind of knew we thought of each musician and each kind of group of musicians, and we put them together, and we had great keyboard players like Bug Johnson from the Hollywood Vampires and Aerosmith.
Oh, wow.
Peter Keys from Leonard Skinner. And, we had all these great keyboardists that played. And so it became like this big, really orchestral, just great, really, really great collective of great musicians that showed up to play on the record, and the lead single has, the great Greg Bissonette, who's,
sweet.
Just the great, I mean, what more can you say about, all these iconic musicians that have come to play? So I'm so honored and grateful, I'm just so honored and grateful. And I'm really grateful of how these 10 songs were presented with these particular collective of musicians that we really, really thought about who would sound good on which song. And it was just so great to actually have the time during, COVID and all that to really think about that and how we were presenting it.
It worked out wonderfully. I mean, some of my favorite tracks are, so there's the title track, which I love, Wild Country. It is such a great song. That sounds, so it's like a tribute to the United States. It sounds...
That's absolutely what it is.
I love it. It's one of my favorite songs on the album.
I go out screaming, let freedom reign, ride on the eagle's wing, feel the angels at your side, hear the devil sing, big sky so beautiful, as far as the eye can see, let your wild heart go unchained, let it be untamed in the wild country. I sleep on the desert ground, dance on the southern shore.
Thank you.
Another Take a Swing. That has just got this killer riff. I love it. And it sounds a bit autobiographical.
It is. It actually is. And it's also, it's really just like the COVID. It was another COVID frustration situation, and it was like, you know what I mean? It was like, I think we were working on Take a Swing. I think after I'd come out of, I think I'd gotten COVID and it was actually, and coming out of it, or whatever. Yeah. And so we were working on that. And so that's kind of what that was about. It was like, coming out, I'd actually gotten sick.
Yeah.
And I was actually coming out of being sick. And so that's really where that was born. But yeah, there's a lot of different translations for Take a Swing, I think, that really come out of, also the era of the breakup, of the divorce, of the relationship ending. It's also kind of that thing too, when it's like, enough's enough and I'm done. So I think the translation could go different ways. However, I'm super excited about the guitar sounds. I think Joey Sykes played some great guitar. Joey's playing a great Leslie West type lick. That's not me in the front. That's Joey Sykes.
Okay.
And I'm taking a swing. He's trying to. We were also thinking of Leslie West, which is why those licks are in there, because that's also Take a Swing became a tribute to Leslie, because we lost Leslie in 2020. Right. So it was during the time that I actually had COVID. So I was sick.
Wow.
And Leslie West passed. And so it was just a really, down time. So Take a Swing was also a tribute to Leslie West. It was really truly a tribute. And so Joey wanted to play some Leslie West licks. And I recorded the wah-wah guitar solos in my kitchen. I actually had two Marshalls in our dining room.
Oh my God.
I had two Marshall stacks. I had a Bogner head and a Marshall. And I put the microphones, and we had a long kitchen, and I put the microphones on one end of the kitchen.
Okay.
And the guitar sounds were massive. And I went into some big studios. Once everything opened back up, I went into some big studios with some of those same rigs, and it sounded smaller.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, dude, I recorded massive sounding guitar tracks in my house, in my kitchen, in my dining room. And I was like, and then I bring it in a major studio, and it just sounds smaller, So
geez.
It was very interesting. It was a very interesting situation. So I was learning to capture those sounds in houses, and we were having fun doing the whole hanging the mics on the rails on the stairwells for the drums, and doing all the whole
that is awesome.
The English rock, and so we were able to capture all those kinds of sounds, in the midst of doing that. So I just was so excited, and then to have great engineers and producers like Justin Cordeleau and Dan Rothschild and Joey Sykes work on this record was incredible. All those guys are complete iconic geniuses in this field. And it's so amazing to have such a great production team work on this record. It was really incredible.
You've also got the song Reborn, which I love. It sounds kind of like an updated, nastier version of the Yardbirds.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you say that, Mark, because it definitely has that 60s British pop feel. Yeah. And I think Joey Sykes brings a lot of that to the table with me. And I like that, because usually with me, it's a bluesy riff, and it's really dark and bluesy. And it's like, filled with my baby done left me and my dog ran down the road, type. I'm over there playing some dark ass blues, and so I have to send that to Joey Sykes so he can pop it up, and it has such a pop sensibility that he can bring some happiness to this. The dog is running back home now. The dog he
got hungry. He came back.
The dog came back, right? Exactly. I know. So Joey would have this innate ability and this pop sensibility to write, those kinds of songs. And so we had the great Herman Matthews, that works with Stevie Wonder and Tower of Power, and a lot of other great iconic R&B artists and rock artists and different artists. And so it was so great to have Herman Matthews and his shuffle on this record. He has such an iconic, unique shuffle sound. So to have Herman Matthews play drums on this with Jürgen Carlson from Government Mule, it was incredible. And so I also thought of Leslie. I thought, let's try to pay tribute as much as we can. And I used a Big Muff fuzz pedal and a P90 guitar, and really, tried to channel a lot of that. And also, some more of the psychedelic British pop sound. It was amazing that Joey was able to channel a lot of that sensibility into Reborn.
I think my favorite on the album, though, is Voyager.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
That is just a standout, not just because it doesn't sound like anything else on the album, but it could 100% be on a late era Led Zeppelin album, or maybe Coverdale Page. I mean, it's got that Middle Eastern Indian sound that's right up Page's alley, and that riff. It's my favorite song on the album. It's amazing. It's epic.
You
Wow. Thank you, Mark. Thank you so much, Mark. I'm so glad you enjoyed Voyager. It was so fun to create. And it was such a song of hope, really. It's such a song of, I think, who we all are as souls. And I don't want to get too deep or heavy or mystical or whatever, but it's about the journey of a soul and a deity of whatever deity you believe in and pray to, and that's on you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's the Voyager thing, is that you are following that deity. And so it was a very interesting song to write. Having Peter Keys, Doug Bossy, and I create that intro as Sunrise was really, I was envisioning the sun rising over, like, say, Jerusalem or something in ancient times or somewhere in the Middle East. And so I wanted to create that spiritual scene, and so we created that piece of music, and that sunrise happening. And I actually played an oud, which is a Middle Eastern type of lute.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
On the track. I played an oud. Peter Keys and we were also doing a lot of bell tones to kind of signify, some different things in space and whatnot to make it, mystical, it needed to sound, have all these different sounds. And so Peter Keys from Lynyrd Skynyrd, Doug Bossy, who's a great production engineer from LA, does a lot of film and TV. And I created that intro. And so Voyager was one of the first songs I wrote when I moved to Nashville. I had an open A tuning, and I would drop the low E down to A, and I would play all these different voicings. And so I had Voyager, the riff, for quite some time. And so and it's interesting you mentioned the world music, because I was listening to a lot of world music when I first moved to Nashville. I took a long break for a lot of wellness and healing and focus on my health.
Oh,
and so while I was doing that, I was listening to a lot of Middle Eastern music. I was listening to music actually from all over the world. I was listening to Ali Farka Touré from West Africa. I was listening to Rahim Al-Hajj from Middle East, and Anushka Shankar from India, Bazayuka Yate from Africa. Wow. All these different, I was listening to Tanari Wynn from Africa. I was listening to all these different artists like that, and so that was translating into what I was writing.
Sure.
And I guess that's how the influence came, I guess, because like the guys you mentioned, also at that time, listening to, Rahim Al-Hajj, and then putting on Little Richard and then putting on Motorhead.
That's a 1, 2, 3 punch. I don't think anybody's ever done before.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like, that's the kind of, eclectic taste that I'm working with while I'm writing this music. So
wow.
Like, that's where a lot of the influence came from. I mean, it came from, listening to a lot of world music and using those voicings, and then writing a very spiritual story. And then we had Bobby Rondinelli, who was in Rainbow. So we wanted to pay tribute to Cozy Powell on the track. That was the one thing that it was like, Bobby had replaced Cozy Powell, and Cozy had played with Jeff Beck. He had played with Black Sabbath. He had played with Rainbow, so many great artists. And so we really wanted to pay tribute to him in that way. But yeah, I'm glad that it's what a compliment. I mean, I take that as such a compliment that you would even think to compare my music to Led Zeppelin. I mean, that is such an honor. Thank you, Mark.
Well, that's the first band that came into mind when I heard it. It's just, it sounds like it could be something off of Into the Outdoor or Presence. It's at that ear, or like I said, or the Coverdale Page album. It's that Pagey sound, I guess, of the structure of the song. I think that's what it is.
Wow. Well, thank you. Yeah, that's, like I say, and again, I was thinking in terms of so much world music, and to have those iconic rhythm section play with us, it was so great. And I wanted to pay tribute, I think, too, to Richie Blackmore. I know you're bringing up Jimmy Page, but I also with Bobby playing drums, I wanted to pay tribute to Rainbow some. So I think some of the guitar work we used a Michael Landau signature Stratocaster, and I paid tribute to Ritchie Blackmore, as well as Jeff Beck at the end on I Am Ra, which is really an ascension of Ra. I think of the ancient Egyptian times, of them talking about the god Ra. So, and him, flying away or whatever he did. And it's like, I really was channeling Jeff with that melody, I felt like. Okay. And it was a way to kind of pay tribute and send Jeff off spiritually, which what another tragic loss we had at that time. And really wanted to have that closure of that ending piece really be a tribute to Jeff Beck.
Well, it's very successful in that it's just the whole album is fantastic. And I've been enjoying listening to it for days now.
Thank you so much.
Where is the best way for people to find the album and pick it up?
Well, we've got some links. If you go to, the best way to look for everything is at Instagram, at Lance Lopez Guitarist. Okay. You can go there, and there are links in my bio that'll take you to the Cleopatra record stores and all the other links to get it online. We have some orange limited edition vinyl, which is super cool right now. Sweet. And so, those are limited edition. They're super cool looking. I was so proud to have them and for them to come out. But get them while you can. There's links in the bio and Instagram, Lance Lopez Guitarist. Also, LanceLopez.net is our official website, and our tour dates are posted there as well.
I was just going to ask about that.
Yeah, we have a link for tour dates at LanceLopez.net, and we post them on our social media. But the best way is to go to our website, look at the tour dates. We have a Bands in Town calendar that is updated pretty much daily.
Oh, awesome.
At this point. Well, so we're looking forward to getting out and supporting the record and touring. We're starting in Florida on Labor Day. So Labor Day weekend, we'll be down in South Florida, Naples. Z's Music Kitchen.
Naples is beautiful.
Yeah, we'll start down in Florida, and then we'll work our way up to the to Texas and Louisiana, and up to the Midwest, and then by the end of the year, we're going to be doing the East Coast and New England, and all that area around November in the fall. So we're looking forward to getting out on the road. We're making plans for next year for the West Coast and for some other things abroad. So. The best way to keep up with us is at, on LanceLopez.net and at Lance Lopez Guitarist on Instagram. We really keep it updated. Follow us, tell your friends, share it, spread the word that we've got a great record out.
Absolutely. And I hope you guys have a date in the DC area, because I will be there.
We're definitely working on it, Mark. We're definitely working on it.
Thank you so much for spending your evening and talking about this awesome blues album. It is just killer, and I highly recommend it. Blues fans are not, so much, pick it up. It's awesome.
Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor.
Oh, my pleasure.
To sit here and talk with you tonight about everything, and I really appreciate you having me on the show. Thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you in DC soon, Mark.
Awesome. The honor is mine.
Rain. Waiting on you, but you never came. You were sitting on your phone, placing all the blame. Scrolling through your posts and shaking my head. You're trying to make me a fool when I